1914, beginning of World War One. I often say that, understandably, the World War One period is so eclipsed by World War Two and the Holocaust, of course, for us, and perhaps even by the world. But to really understand Jewish history in that period, you have to know what mayhem, destruction, lack of chinuch, difficulty, death, plague World War One caused. And we're going to try to understand that a little bit and what Rav Zalman's role was and what happened to him. So he, with others, of course, was a refugee. They used to say about Zettel itself. You remember he was Rav in Zettel for 18 years. That's where the Chofetz Chaim had been born. He used to call him Minor Rav. You know, he was, of course, much older, as we discussed last time, that Rav Zalman used to say that Zettel was such that you could go to sleep and Zettel was part of one country and you woke up as part of another country. So I guess it's kind of like a border town or something. So eventually Rav Zalman has to run away, runs to Minsk. But before that, I just want to talk about a little bit what Chayalim, Jewish soldiers, would do. And there was a very interesting situation. We don't realize there were over 1 million Jewish soldiers involved in World War One. Here's the numbers, the round numbers. There were about 100,000 in the German army, 55,000 in the French army, 500,000 in the Russian army, etc. And altogether, over 150,000 Jews died as soldiers in the army. Now, you can imagine the loyalty issues, the true loyalty issues that went on. You're a Russian soldier, you capture a Jewish soldier. Of course, as a good Jew, you want to treat him well. As a Russian, he's not different than others, and vice versa. And besides the interesting moral questions and religious questions, halachic questions, which would go on for the soldiers, was the non-Jews' reaction to that. Because besides anti-Semitism, which Jews are always facing in those times, is also the blown up and perhaps even real worry that sometimes authorities would have that you're loyal to the Jews and not to the country. And a lot of interesting situations that happened because of that. In fact, Kaiser Wilhelm, the German leader, at a certain point freed the Jewish prisoners from Russia, thinking they were on his side. So that was good for them, but you can imagine it was very bad for their counterparts still in the Russian army. This was the shvua that the swear, the hatzara, I don't know how to translate in English, hatzarat imunim, that a soldier would have to take. Hareini nishba b'shem Hashem Elokei Yisrael. Obviously, someone who knew something created this swear. Hareini nishba b'shem Hashem Elokei Yisrael shani rotze v'avod et Kesar Russia u'memshelet Russia. I'm working for the Tsar and for the Memshelah. Eich umash yitzivu oti, whatever they command me to do. Kilo haiti chayav la'avod l'man hatzol Toratena akdosha, as if I would have to work for Torah. Amazing. Aval im avor al shvua eya muchram im mishpachti, I will be in Cherem with my family. Bolam hazeh bolam haba. So very, very from shvua the Jewish chaylim would have to do. And you can imagine with that many people in the army and people moving around, it was a terrible time. What is Rav Zalman doing? It seems that Rav Zalman had a certain chasanut, he had a certain covering, I think because he was a Rav of a town or something. And part of the problem was that amongst all of the suffering that every Jew had, was also great Talmidei Chacham and Rabbanim who were on the move, who were getting drafted. It's well known that the Stipler was drafted, the famous story about him in Shatnez and him in Shabbos, and he was in charge. He was actually a guard of a Russian compound or something, a Russian military facility. That was his job in the army. Now, Rav Zalman had moved, and family had moved from Zettel, and they found their way to Minsk. Minsk was a bigger town, I believe, and to get a feel for what type of person his wife was, they had a big apartment of 3 rooms that they rented, and she said it's not shayach. We can't live in such a big apartment, and at this time Jews are lacking of other place, and they said we're going to live in 2 rooms, and they gave their 3rd room to the illustrious Chazon Ish, which is really interesting. Anybody knows we should really do a series about the Chazon Ish, but the Chazon Ish according to many, was the greatest, certainly one of the greatest rabbinic figures in the last 100 years, if not longer. His svarim are authoritative in the Kol Torah Kula, happened to be his yortzeit just last Thursday, so it's nice we can speak about him a little bit, but for sure, he was someone of the greatest proportion. And he was about the same age as Rav Zalman, perhaps a little younger. Lists him as being born in 1978, and Rav Zalman was born in 1978 or 1980, but he, as opposed to Rav Zalman had already been a Rav for many, many years, and was in that way, the Chazon Ish was very, very much to himself, very, very hidden, very not looking for any position, any of that. He was kol kulo shakua, as we say, kol kulo involved in his learning and sunk in his learning. And in fact, those who learn Chazon Ish know that one of his greatest and one of his greatest accomplishments was an Eruvin. And it seems that Eruvin was written during this period in Minsk, almost 2.5 years that he lived in Rav Zalman's house. And his wife was in their old home, and she had a textile store, and she would come for Shabbos, and the Chazon Ish just sat and shtagged the whole time. And Rav Zalman, by the way, that sentiment that his wife, Rav Zalman's wife, said was very typical of something that the Chavetz Chaim had said. So I just want to share what the Chavetz Chaim had said, that the Chavetz Chaim wouldn't sleep in his room during World War I, not even by his table, right? He was on a wood bench, a wood bench without a blanket or a pillow, and his head was on his hands, no pillow. Hard to sleep like that, and it was difficult for him to sleep. So he explained, my brothers are running from the house, moving around. The Jewish soldiers are on the front, in mud and cold, and I'm going to sleep in peace on my bed. So that was how far the Chazon Ish took it. Rav Zalman's wife said, we can't live in a large 3-room apartment, and they made the Chazon Ish their illustrious visitor over that time. And in the next session, we'll talk about what Rav Zalman actually did during this period, the tremendous pulot he did to help Rabbanim, to help Talmidei Yeshiva avoid the war, which is really typical. I'll show a lot of sides of his personality and the way he worked in the next section.